All right, good afternoon, everyone. I call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 16 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Natural Resources. Going to run through these opening comments as quickly as I can. So pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee is continuing its study of a greenhouse gas emissions cap for the oil and gas sector. Today is the final meeting with witnesses on this study. We're taking place in a hybrid format today. And now that we have started, there are no screenshots or taking photos while we're underway, but proceedings will be available and are being televised via the House of Commons website. For anyone attending the meeting in person, we ask anyone to wear a mask except for members who are at their seats during the proceedings. A couple of quick comments. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. Interpretation is available. I don't think we have anyone joining by Zoom today, so we'll skip over that. And all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, just raise your hand and we will get into the speaking order. I'd like to welcome Madame Michaud, Madame Posey, Mr. Long, and Mr. Morris today. Now to our witnesses. Welcome to the Minister of Natural Resources, the Honourable Jonathan Wilkinson, and along with officials from Natural Resources, and as well, welcome to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, the Honourable Stephen Guilbeault, along with officials. We are going to try to keep the ministers as long as we can, given that we had a slight delay. But with that, we'll introduce the departmental officials as we get them. There's been some technology challenges, and so as we get them in, otherwise Mr. Hargrove may have to shoulder a lot of the backup here today. Let's jump right into the opening statements. We'll hear 5 minutes from each of the ministers, and then we jump right into our rounds of questions. So, Minister Guilbeault, if you'd like to start.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de cette présentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that introduction and for inviting me today.
To recognize that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Il s'agit d'un comité important sur un sujet.
This is a very important committee that is meeting to discuss a very important issue. I'm very pleased to be here with you, along with my colleague, Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you for bringing so many expert witnesses to this committee. I hope our contribution builds on your excellent work. The questions being asked here underscore your breadth of experience on energy issues. Mr. Chair, I'd like to frame my remarks with two global realities. L'une est l'agression russe.
One is Russian aggression and the European conflict it has sparked. A conflict that is rearranging global energy supply chains in real time. The other reality is the climate crisis and the global competition to make sure we're not left behind in a carbon-constrained world. In the heat of the moment, those realities may seem at odds, even working at cross purposes.
Speak of change, the end of business as usual, and ultimately they point to the same direction. Comme l'a dit le Premier ministre la semaine dernière,
as the Prime Minister said last week, European leaders are clear. They don't just want to end their dependence on Russian oil and gas. They want to accelerate the energy transformation to clean and green power. Last week, you will be well aware that we tabled our government's 2030 emissions reduction plan. I encourage you all to study it. There's a lot in there, and it reflects thoughtful contributions from every corner of Canada, including Indigenous peoples who must be full partners as they have been stewards of our environment since time immemorial.
In every sector, a roadmap that identifies pathways for Canada to reach its emission reduction target of 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030 and net zero emission by 2050. Ce plan se veut avant tout ambitieux.
Above all, this plan aims to be both ambitious and achievable. And so, to come back to our two realities, we all recognize that there will continue to be a global need for oil and gas in the years to come.
The oil and gas sector is Canada's biggest emitter. Between 1990 and 2019, the sector's total greenhouse gas emissions grew by 87%. Today, the oil and gas sector accounts for 26% of Canada's emission. Être compétitif dans un avenir sous
Competing in a carbon-constrained future means not only diversifying our energy mix, but offering lower carbon oil and gas to the world. Canada's biggest oil and gas producers recognize this reality and have committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. They see that reaching a net zero global economy represents a massive economic opportunity for businesses, workers, and communities. Energy producers look for policy stability and certainty to invest wisely. And if there is any oil and gas sector in the world that can do this, it's Canada's. We have the skilled workers, the engineers, the energy innovators to make it happen. The cap that we have committed to develop on emissions from the oil and gas sector will be a vital step, both in our work to meet our 2030 emissions goals and to stay on track to reach net zero emissions by 2050. We have not made any firm decisions on the design and scope of the oil and gas emissions cap. Its design will need to take into account the complex character of the industry.
It will need to ensure that emissions decline at a pace and scale needed to achieve net zero by 2050. Mr. Chair, last week my department published a discussion paper and launched consultations with provinces, territories, Indigenous leaders, stakeholders, and the public on options for regulating Canada's commitment to reduce oil and gas methane by 75% by 2030. Au cours de ces discussions, nous explorerons.
During these discussions, we'll explore how this commitment relates to carbon capping. Minister Wilkinson will describe more about the consultation process on the design of the cap, and we will be happy to answer your questions. Mr. Chair, this committee's study is important to that conversation. We all want a healthier, more resilient, and more equitable Canada. And we are all here to be part of the solution. Thank you.
And we'll jump now to the Minister Wilkinson. We'll give you your 5 minutes as well. And just so everybody knows, we'll use a quick timekeeping trick. The yellow card's 30 seconds left, red card, time's up. Don't stop mid-sentence, but wrap it up as quickly as you can, and then we'll get on to the next set of conversations. Get that red card ready. Anyway, over to you, Minister Wilkinson.
Merci. Bon après-midi, Monsieur.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for your invitation to speak. I am very pleased to be here with you today.
And by condemning the ongoing brutality we are seeing from the Russian regime in Ukraine, the images that we saw over the weekend were clearly awful and unspeakable, and Canada stands in steadfast support of the people of Ukraine and of our European allies. Since this illegal invasion, issues relating to energy security have come to the fore. Amid spiking energy prices, we have seen an urgent desire on the part of European countries to replace Russian oil and gas in the short term, while they concurrently work to shift as rapidly as possible to renewables and clean hydrogen in order to end their reliance on Russian oil and gas altogether. This is happening at a time when the IPCC is telling the world that with respect to climate change, we are at a crossroads. The decisions we make now can secure a livable future. Canada must be capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time. We can help our European partners in the short term while continuing to take bold action to meet our ambitious climate goals. So that is what our government is doing, supporting global energy markets while taking aggressive and ambitious action to lower emissions. I want to echo Minister Guilbeault. Reducing carbon pollution isn't just necessary to save our planet. It will also create good jobs and opportunities in every region of this country. Companies like Suncor are planning to invest significantly in hydrogen, and companies like Amazon are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into renewable energy in Alberta. And 13 of the world's top 100 clean tech companies are Canadian. However, even beyond a significant move towards renewables and hydrogen in a net zero transition, there will be a continuing and important role for hydrocarbon fuels in non-combustion related applications, including hydrogen. Prior to the Russian invasion, oil demand was projected to be relatively constant through 2030 before we start to see declines associated with the broad deployment of zero-emission vehicle technology. Those fuels that are produced in an ultra-low carbon fashion will have significant and increasing value in a world that is transitioning to lower carbon, which brings us to today's topic, the design and implementation of a cap on emissions from Canada's oil and gas sector. By capping emissions from oil and gas, we are ensuring that Canada will meet its climate targets while helping Canada's oil and gas sector compete in a world in which ultra-low carbon products have financial value. Canada's oil and gas industry is already very much alive to the value that these products will hold, and that is why they themselves committed to net zero in 2050 via the Oil Sands Pathway Alliance, with whom I spoke just this week, and indeed with whom I speak regularly. In proposing a descending cap on emissions from Canada's oil and gas sector, our government is taking them up on their offer. We are designing a regulatory framework to help industry and government achieve our shared objectives. To get us there, we have been engaging with Canadians. We're consulting with industry, Indigenous communities, academics, non-governmental organizations, groups like the Net Zero Advisory Board, the clean tech industry, and of course, the oil and gas sector. We are also working actively with provincial governments. Officials in both my department and those in Minister Guilbeault's are considering all of these contributions. Any Canadian who wants to offer written submissions can do so, and we certainly look forward to hearing from this committee in that regard. We plan to conclude the engagement formal process by this fall and will be poised to move forward by late 2022 or early 2023. It is only by working together, by collaborating with partners across the country, that we will be able to both reduce emissions and generate economic growth. This is good for our country's future. It's how we leave a healthy economy and a healthy environment for our children. I look forward to reviewing the final report of this committee on your recommendations, as it will play an important part in the development of this emissions reduction initiative. And with that, I would be happy, and I'm sure Minister Guilbeault would be happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you. And the first round of questions that we have will be 6 minutes for each of the four. And as I have done, I tend to give a fair bit of latitude, reminding everybody that we are here on the study of greenhouse gas emissions cap for the oil and gas sector. And so we'll turn it over to Mr. McLean for his first 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and let me thank both ministers for showing up today and giving us an hour of their time combined. Much appreciated. I heard your comments, Minister Wilkinson, first of all. I heard your comments here, and it echoes what I've heard from you and your colleague here at the table and your Prime Minister several times, that we can have this and we can have that too. And I think it's fair to say, if you look at a portfolio of solutions, we can have some of this and we can have some of that, but you can't have all of both. So let's get towards the reality here about what our future looks like. I'd like you to put that on the table here, first of all. I'm going to ask you, because you were at the IEA meetings and so was I a couple of weeks ago, and we heard quite clearly that the world is demanding more energy from Canada as it tries to wean itself off of Russian energy that has been a course they've taken that is the wrong course, and now they're seeing the results of that course. You committed to 300,000 barrels a day more of Canadian energy by the end of the year. Then that'll be a stretch. I think we've talked about that. However, the question is, how do you give 300,000 barrels a day, 4% of Canada's current energy production, and think that makes a drop in the bucket for Europe's security?
Thank you. And yes, certainly enjoyed the conversations we had at the International Energy Agency. I would say that there was a second part to the conversation at the IEA. They want more energy from countries like Canada to help displace Russian oil and gas, but they also are focused very much on accelerating the transition to renewables and hydrogen. That was an absolute unanimous issue with all European countries. And certainly Canada is not claiming that it's going to solve all of the issues that Europe has with respect to displacing Russian oil and gas. We are part of a group that have come forward collectively to try to do that. That included additional oil and gas from the United States. It included releases from the strategic reserves, and it included Brazil stepping up with 300,000 barrels of oil.
Well, I'm not sure that answered the full question, Mr. Minister, but I will say that your recollection of what happened at that meeting and mine are two different things, because there was definitely not unanimity amongst the IEA members about what we need to focus on at this point in time. Matter of fact, I think the Czech Republic actually said it is time for us to put aside the current emergency for what is their emergency in Europe right now, which is their very existence. And now I know we have to balance these things in perspective, but this perspective has to be looked at going forward, and we have to balance what we do for the world here, because the world has continued to grow their energy consumption, and we've been on the sidelines. Committing 300,000 barrels a day equivalent over the next year, potentially, is a pittance, first of all, and we can't even get it to Tidewater because we don't have the infrastructure. And I'm going to say right here, that represents failure from this government, from a country, and we're still importing over 1 million barrels a day that we don't carbon cost in its production. These are flaws in your approach. So I'm going to ask you here, if you think about it, when you look at the actual production of oil around the world and the representation Canada has in there, we rank pretty highly, up with Norway as far as our transparency and our ESG characteristics of the oil production we have. Are you suggesting we displace that Canadian oil with offshore oil, both in Canada and in the growing markets around the world, particularly in the world's poorest markets?
Well, I mean, firstly, with respect to the energy transition, I would just direct you to the communiques that come out of the IEA, which actually do focus on the energy transition and accelerating that to ensure that they are actually gaining domestic energy security through the work to transition to hydrogen and renewables. But what I would say is countries within the IEA thanked Canada significantly for stepping up with 300,000 barrels of oil. That included all of the European countries and the United States. And certainly they are interested in a conversation with us about how we can help them both bridge and transition. And so the European Union and Canada have a working group that's been established to focus on both LNG and hydrogen and what we can do to actually address them. We have a similar working group that is ongoing with Germany. And certainly the relationship between Canada and European countries with respect to energy. And energy is not just oil and gas. It is renewables. It is hydrogen. It is a whole range of different forms of energy. Is extremely close and working very productively right now to try to address both short-term and long-term issues.
Oh, well, thank you, Minister. And I think when you talk about renewables here, we talked about hydrogen over there in Europe as well. And hydrogen, of course, green hydrogen is unviable at this point in time, both from an energy return over energy invested perspective, but also from a cost perspective. So we've got to balance all of these things. I think you're suggesting that we continue to ramp up inflation on energy around the world, not just in Canada, but make energy a much larger piece of the cost of everything, including food around the world. There was a time when I listened to your government talk about a carbon tax being the most efficient form of taxing carbon, putting a price on carbon. And that seems to have been misplaced by several regulatory jumps now, including the Clean Fuel Standard and now this cap. So is it no longer your position that it is the most efficient way of cutting back carbon?
Well, I think if you ask 100 economists, 99.5 of them will tell you that it is the most efficient and effective way that actually incents innovation. I would note that it's something that the Conservative Party of Canada campaigned on in the last election. And certainly it is a critical part of our plan to reduce emissions and to incent innovation and build a clean growth economy. We've been very clear about that through 3 different elections, and it's something that Canadians endorsed in the last campaign.
That you're trying to have your cake here and eat it too if you're going to have a tax and a whole bunch of regulatory burden on top of those. But as far as the emissions reduction cap goes, I'm going to quote the Premier of Alberta, the NDP Premier of Alberta, who was last in power, who called your emissions reduction plan a fantasy. Comment, please.
Well, I would just comment, I spent both last weekend on Monday in Calgary with the industry, and I would tell you that the industry's message back to the government is we want to collaborate. We want to work hard. Yes, it's ambitious. It's ambitious in every sector of the emissions reduction plan, but we want to work together to try to find a way to get there. And that was true across the piece. And I think you would see it if you actually went and looked at the statement that was put out on the emissions reduction plan from the Pathways Alliance, but also from the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers.
We're out of our 6 minutes, and we will go right now over to Mr. Shahal for your first 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister Guilbeault and Wilkinson, for joining us today on this important study. Emissions from the oil and gas sector make up 26% of our national emissions overall. We must reduce that. And based on testimony we have received over the last several weeks, industry agrees. Could the ministers please speak to the ways in which the government will be working with industry partners to establish a cap?
Thank you, Member Shahal. We must reduce emissions, and everyone has a role to play. I've been pleased to hear that industry partners share that view, and I've spoken personally with many of them in the past few months. We've already begun informal engagement with industry to seek their views on the design of the emission cap, existing opportunities, and policy and regulatory options. We will be publishing a discussion paper this spring, and these conversations will continue, as Minister Wilkinson was pointing out, throughout this year as we consider how best to design and implement the cap in ways that provides regulatory certainty to industry while also reaching our emissions reduction goals. We're also gathering feedback from industry partners on how related measures that exist will work with the cap.
So I would just echo in my meetings with the sector, and that included meetings this week, the message coming from the sector is we want to collaborate, and certainly that is the message that I try to give them is we want to collaborate with you. Government needs to be a partner in this conversation. We certainly did that with the Emissions Reduction Fund and the Orphan Wells funding during COVID, which was about actually addressing environmental liabilities during an economic crisis and a health crisis. We are now doing that with investments in technology development, including carbon capture and sequestration. We are committed to working in collaboration with the industry to both reduce emissions in a thoughtful way and also to ensure that we are growing an economy, a clean growth economy that's going to provide jobs and economic opportunity for our children.
Ministers, over the last several weeks, the committee has heard a lot about the importance of regulatory certainty during our study. Could the ministers speak to the ways in which the federal government has and will continue to work with the provinces to ensure that everyone is playing their part while creating a more predictable and certain environment and investments?
Thank you for the question. As you know, our government has introduced a number of measures in all regions to reduce emissions, including the methane regulations and carbon pricing schedules. We will be working closely with our counterparts to consider how a cap on emissions would work with those existing measures. The emissions reduction plan that was announced last Tuesday committed to exploring tools to make Canada's world-leading pollution pricing system durable and predictable, no matter who's in government. These tools might include investment approaches like carbon contracts for differences, which enshrine future price levels in contracts between the government and low-carbon project investors, or exploring legislative approaches to support a durable price on pollution.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, certainly I'll take more on the provincial side. The coordination across all jurisdictions is going to be key in designing an effective cap on emissions from the oil and gas sector. But it's also going to be important in the context of actually working together to frame and to develop the economy of the future. I met this week with Minister Savage, and I think what we do agree on is the need to reduce emissions significantly in the oil and gas sector to ensure the sector remains competitive in an economy that is going to be going through a transition. I spoke with Minister Parsons, Minister Eyre, and Minister Ralston in the other three provinces that are most significant in this context. We need to continue to work together. I think they all agree on that, to ensure that we are moving forward in a thoughtful way. And certainly we intend to do that both with respect to emissions, but also with respect to economic conversations that we intend to launch over the coming months.
Could the ministers explain to the committee why they're targeting the oil and gas sector and not other sectors of the economy with a cap on emissions at this time?
Thank you for the question. And although it is true that there is no formal cap for other sectors, if you were to look at the zero-emission vehicle mandate that we will be putting in place, basically mandating that 100% of light-duty vehicles be zero-emission vehicles by 2035, one could easily argue that this is a cap. Same thing with the clean electricity grid, where we want to have a net zero grid by 2035. So I think that this capping and reducing emissions approach is actually one that we have embraced for many different sectors of our economy.
Yeah, I would just agree with Minister Guilbeault. I mean, we've looked at each sector in terms of what are the instruments that are most applicable in terms of being able to enable reductions, but also to incent innovation. The supply mandate for the auto sector is one. The building codes, the Net Zero Building Code, will eventually be something in the building sector. The phase out of coal was another tool that we used in that context. And in the oil and gas sector, the methane regs is effectively a cap because you're actually looking at specific reductions that are required in the methane. And I would say that that's been enormously successful. Both Saskatchewan and Alberta are on track to meet, and in fact, Saskatchewan is on track to exceed the methane reductions. And both of them will tell you that out of that has come the development of technology that is going to allow them to export to other markets that are looking to do the same thing that Canada did with respect to emissions reduction.
Thank you for joining us today and supporting our study on this really important subject, and thank you for the ERP plan that was put forward last week.
All right, thank you. Et maintenant, Monsieur Simard, vous avez...
Now, Mr. Simard, you have 6 minutes. Thank you for coming today, ministers. This committee is meeting today to talk about the emissions cap. When we talk about capping, it's ensuring that there is no increase. But I was wondering why you have approved what has just been suggested. Is that because it's going to reduce the emissions? Well, there hasn't been any official announcement on the project. But if you look at the plan that was presented last week, you will see that we got a lot of information from the IAE, for example, and other Canadian energy agencies. We integrated all of the elements into the reduction plan, and despite the increase in production, we have always said that we are going to tackle emissions. Mr. Wilkinson just talked about what was going on with regard to methane and GHGs. So despite the increases, we are fully aware of the lives of many players throughout the country to see how they can deal with this 2030 plan. You referred to Équiterre a number of times. You said that if the federal government is serious when it comes to fighting climate change, it must reject the project. Are the ecologists tonight going to prove that you are not a good player? Well, I would say that they said that this was the most solid and the most transparent plan and the most convincing one with regard to Canada achieving its objectives. It does not depend on what Canada decides to do, that is increase production by 300 barrels a day. I'm sorry, no, that isn't true at all. The justification of this business of saying what is going on in Russia is the reasoning behind this is not accurate. You're talking about a million barrels of oil. Do you know what kind of emissions that produces? It's at 430 megatons. That's the equivalent of 60% of all of the emissions that this government calculated in 2019. So it's fine to talk about CCUS, but I was wondering where those 430 million tons are going to go. So you are including all of the GHGs, not just those coming from oil extraction, because when it comes to extraction, it's 0.04% of Canada's emissions. If you look at the total, that's not how everything is calculated, as you know, when it comes to counting GHGs. Well, listen, I'm trying to answer your question. So the methodology used was applied where there are the GHGs, where those are occurring. All right, so when it is said that the increase of fossil fuels is an obstacle to reducing GHGs, well, the report by IPCC says that we can no longer have oil and gas production that is unabated. So the IPCC says that to respect this cap of a few degrees, we have to reduce our cap by 2030. And we have the figures for that. And it says that in 2050, there will still be 50 billion barrels of oil used throughout the world, but it has to be low-emission oil and gas, and that's exactly what we are trying to achieve. Well, I'm just going to end by saying, but you have presented a reduction plan, and just a few days after approving the North Bay project, and I will let my colleague continue. Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming today. We're going to talk about this further. The UN says that investing in new technologies in this area is silly. I'm sorry, I don't have the communique before me, but I think that's clear. It says that the climate militants are often painted as radicals, but the real dangerous radicals are the people who countries who increase the production of fossil fuels. Is that correct? Well, I think that's what was said. Do you agree with the UN Secretary General who says that the real dangerous radicals are the countries who increase the production of fossil fuels? Well, I've often been called a radical as an ecologist and as a politician, so I'm an expert in this field of being a radical. What I can say, though, is that when you look at all of this, and you probably read the report presented by IPCC, it says there won't be It doesn't say there won't be any oil and gas in 2050. There will be less, but that oil has to be sequestered. Are we talking about green energy here or what? No, well, let's go back to North Bay. It's the first time in Canada that there is going to be a well that is going to go that deep, and it will take 18 to 36 days to get the fluid coming out of that well. Do you know about that? Well, there was an environmental assessment done that took 4 years. And it was done under the former act, but I think that you have to remember that since we came to power in 2015, the agency has incorporated a lot of elements regarding local risks, even for the projects that are being assessed under the former regime. We suggested an environmental assessment program where it's no longer going to be as political, whereas under the Conservatives, everything was politicized. Now, the agency made a recommendation last December saying that after studying this project for 4 years, we've come to the conclusion that there isn't any major impact. Obviously, there are a number of conditions that were imposed, and they are legally constraining conditions. It's not a wish list. It is a list of conditions that the company has to abide by. Otherwise, it cannot continue with this project if it violates those conditions.
For 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wilkinson, who's like an old hand at our committee. It's nice having you back. And Mr. Guilbeault, this is your first time welcome. So I will talk to you, Mr. Guilbeault, because we talked with Mr. Wilkinson a fair number of times. We hope we'll talk to him a lot more in the coming study. National News are reporting this afternoon that your government is approving Bay du Nord. Is that true?
It is true that National News are reporting that, yes.
So are you?
There's no official announcement that has been made yet.
That's the 1 billion barrel project, right?
The company said between 300 million
And a
barrels and a billion.
Yeah. So last week you approved 300,000 barrels a day to help Europe. Bay du Nord would be another 200,000 barrels a day. So that's 500,000 barrels a day. I didn't read that in your climate plan. Where did that come from, this decision to start approving new projects like Bay du Nord?
Well, actually, if you'd read the climate plan attentively, you would have seen that the plan rests on a number of different data sources, including the last study from the Canadian Energy Regulator that forecasts an increase in production in Canada.
So you were on side. So the Canadian Energy Regulator is saying we're going to get a million barrels a day. So that's what you're agreeing with, that that's where we're going.
The question is not whether or not we agree or disagree with the Canadian Energy Regulator. The question is, did we use the Energy Regulator as one of the data source to prepare our emission reduction plan? And the answer to that question is yes. And despite those growth in production, our plan clearly shows, to the satisfaction of a number of experts, someone you may know, Andrew Reaver, IPCC scientist.
No, actually, I don't know him, but he did come here. But anyways, what I'm interested in is the fact that under the your plan of this billion-dollar project that may or may not be approved, in between your plan and this big announcement that may be happening, the IPCC released their report this week. Did you read that report?
I have read the report, as I've read every single report since
I'm
1990.
glad, because they say it's now or never, that we're at the point of catastrophic, irreversible climate change. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would agree with many things that the IPCC said this week, including the fact that countries need to present plans where they show emission reduction in every sector of their economy.
And then we have 3 years. 3 years.
That emission have to peak and reduce, and that's exactly what's happening in Canada.
But Bay du Nord is not going to come on for 3 years, so you guys seem to be at cross purposes.
No,
but I want to ask you another thing about the IPCC.
Under the cap, it will have to fit under the cap.
Okay, but we don't have a cap. So this is where I want to get to, because the UN Secretary General said this week in response to that, the government leaders are saying one thing and doing another on the environment. He said government leaders are, quote, lying, and the response will be catastrophic. So you went to COP26 and promised an emissions cap. We're still here waiting to see it, but what we've seen in the meantime is 300,000 barrels last week, 200,000 barrels this week, in perpetuity for at least 30 years. Would you feel that the IPCC, I'm sorry, I'm so dyslexic with that, but that the UN General would have been unfair and saying that government leaders who come to COP26 and make these promises are lying and then go back and then it's business as usual?
We have this expression in French, and I don't think there's a good translation, but si le chapeau vous fait, mettez-le. I don't think the hat fits for us because we're doing exactly what the IPCC says we should be doing. We're capping emissions and reducing them.
Okay.
Our emissions have started reducing in Canada. We have projections for every sector between now and 2030. We have a price on pollution, which is saluted globally as one of the most effective tools to tackle climate change.
Yeah, I get that.
And
And
an
you know, by the way,
experienced
Bob
parliamentarian-
Marley would say if the cap fits, wear it. So I'm just wondering whether you should be wearing the cap because
But
in
an experienced
January,
parliamentarian like you know that we can't do new regulations on a corner of a table. We
I
have
get
to,
that,
we
but-
have a duty to consult, including
but
with
where did you
Indigenous people.
consult on Bay du Nord? I
For-
mean,
for 40
industry.
for
You
40
guys have 6,800 meetings with the oil lobby. If you announce Bay du Nord,
This
you
isn't-
are
this is not
contradicting
true.
the
And-
promises that you are making.
and if
so,
you- if
so
you
let's
look-
go back. Just let me
No, but
finish here
you
on,
made a
on the
number of-
issue. But I haven't got to my question yet. So the issue is, if you're consulting, 400 scientists wrote and said, do not fall for the plan that the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers is pushing on carbon capture. They said it's financially risky, it's not proven at scale, it's not verifiable for actually storing CO2, and then the kicker is it's not going to come on stream for 6 to 8 years. So when I read your plan, which is heavily dependent on carbon capture, if it's 50 billion or 75 billion that you're going to give them, if it's not coming on stream for 6 to 8 years, you're not meeting your 2030 targets, right? Why don't we just say, this is what we're going to invest in big oil. We're going to continue to promote Bay du Nord. We're not going to meet those targets. It'd be better to just be honest with us on this than to claim that you're going to miraculously hit these targets while within the space of a week, you alone have signed off on 500,000 new barrels a day of production. And you're telling us that the CER, which is saying that there's going to be over 1 million barrels a day, that's on your plan as well.
So I'd like to quote directly from the IPCC report on, they call it CCS, they don't call it CCUS, paragraph C.4.6, where they refer to CCS as being a critical technology needed for the world to achieve the
So the
emission
scientists
reduction.
in Canada were wrong when they said that
I'm-
this
I'm
is
quote- I'm-
unproven,
I'm-
unverifiable?
I'm quoting the IPCC here. And
Let's just be clear, Charlie. The 400 were not experts in the field. There were
weren't?
very few people who signed that letter that were
well-
experts in the field. If you look at the IEA,
Well, I know,
you
I
look
know.
at the
I mean, as
IPCC,
compared
you
to
look
the
at the
experts
International
at the
Renewable
Canadian
Energy
Association
Association,
of
you look at the work
Petroleum
that's been
Producers, I
done
can see
in
that.
Norway,
Yeah,
in
I can
Australia, and in a number of countries around the world. What you've just said is full of factual error.
No,
So-
no,
Hey,
no,
we're
no.
out
You
of time
can't
on
kid a
this
kidder.
one, and it does make it very challenging for the interpreters when there's more than one conversation going. So we're at the 6
Sorry,
minutes.
since they interrupted me, do I get an extra minute?
You got an extra half a minute there.
Oh, thank you.
So no, you've already gone over. So
So quickly.
No, we're done. That's 6 minutes.
You were already half a minute over.
We were all you're half. Minute.
I'm outraged.
Yeah. So, I always absolutely.
You're used to that.
Yeah, exactly. So
permanent condition.
I know
Being
that we
Scottish.
had requested the ministers to be here for the first hour. We were late getting started. I'm going to hope we can keep you here for one more, at least the next round, which would take us 25 minutes. And so with that, we're
I
going
think
to
we
go
can do
over-
another round, can we?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. McGuire, jump right to you for a 5-minute round. And
Yeah,
the
thank you,
clock
Mr.
starts.
Chair. I was just really wanting to sit back and watch the marriage continue here, but anyway, I think my colleague from the NDP will even agree with me that there is a new reality out there. And welcome, by the way, both ministers as well. You both referred to it in your opening comments, that there's a new reality. The world has changed in the last month, if not and otherwise. But, we've had a lot of witnesses, excuse me, come before us and stated that the increasing Canadian natural gas is integral for countries to transition away from the coal and some of the higher carbon emitting forms of energy. And so, but industry and experts have also stated that imposing these caps on natural gas will impede their ability to get more Canadian energy to market at a time when you're indicating we need that. So if the mission is to reduce the global greenhouse gases, and it is, why is your government moving forward with an emissions cap that could hinder the exports of Canadian materials?
So thank you for the question. Maybe I can just start on this. The cap is on emissions. It's not necessarily on production. And the focus there is actually driving people to increasingly improve the emissions performance. If you are going to look at exporting LNG and as a transition to hydrogen, which is where everybody in Europe and North America wants to go, you need to do it in a way that's low emissions. You can't do it by using natural gas to liquefy. You've got to use it by using electric drives. You actually have to tie it to displacement of other hydrocarbons in other parts of the world. You have to ensure it's part of a broader energy transition. And yes, you need to implement the methane regs to ensure that you're actually reducing the emissions associated, the content associated with natural gas.
Yeah, thanks,
so
Mr.
it exactly works in the right direction.
Yeah, thanks. No, I just wondered if you recognize that an emissions cap on natural gas could slow down the energy transition in other countries from being able to transition away from coal.
No, and in fact,
You don't.
people have to be very careful that they say all of a sudden that natural gas naturally displaces coal. You actually have to tie it to what's being displaced. If you're shipping it to Asia, it's not necessarily displacing coal. You actually have to follow it and ensure that it's actually
I'm well
doing
aware
that.
of that. Yeah, I mean, I'm well aware of that. I wasn't specifically looking at any country. I said just the ones that are using coal, if you could get them natural gas, it would displace it. So just a simple yes or no. Have you ever publicly stated that you want to get Western Canadian energy to New Brunswick, Canada, so we can stop importing Saudi oil to be refined? Just a yes or a no.
We are always looking at ensuring that Canada is utilizing Canadian energy and energy that comes from reasonable
Western
sources
Canadian
of oil.
energy.
But certainly we are working on that each and every day.
So I didn't get a yes or a no. Have you ever stated that Western?
As
you'd
I
like to see
say, I mean,
Western
and
Canadian oil
particularly
go
in
to New
Atlantic
Brunswick?
Canada, the increasing focus as we think about the energy transition is to actually look to try to reduce the demand for oil in particular
Pretty
and
simple.
move towards renewables. And that's
There's a good
exactly
reason
why
why
there
I
was an
wanted to
announcement
bring that
yesterday
up.
with respect to the Newfoundland Offshore Board, where it is actually taking on the responsibility to do offshore wind and hydrogen and a range of other things.
The Minister of Natural Resources is to support Canadian natural resources. I want the minister just to champion Canadian energy. So do you want Canadians to stop importing foreign oil? Yes or no?
I champion Canadian energy of all forms each and every day, but I do so as a human being that has children that's worried about the climate crisis, and we need to actually ensure that we are working in a manner that's consistent with addressing climate change and doing so in a manner that improves the economic performance of our energy sector broadly. That is hydro, that is oil, that is gas, that is renewables, that is biofuels, that is hydrogen.
Specifically talking about the oil that's coming into the east coast of our country from places that don't have the regulations that we are working under here in this country. And so, yes or no, do you want to stop, importing foreign oil?
Well, I'm certainly glad to hear that you're interested and supportive of regulations to reduce the carbon intensity of the fuels that we use. That's exactly the route that we need to go as we move to actually reduce the consumption domestically and internationally of oil.
Well, I mean, we still don't have an answer. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it would be beneficial to stop importing this foreign oil and use Canadian energy. And so one of the big reasons here is because of the Indigenous part of the whole energy area. And we've had multiple Indigenous leaders have appeared here and stated that the government must get consent from them before they impose an emissions cap on the energy sector. So will you commit today to not impose an emissions cap on the Indigenous communities who have not given you consent to do so?
Well, I would say that this government is very, very much aware of the requirements to have a duty to consult, and we work each and every day to honor those obligations. And of course, through the process of doing the development of the emissions cap, we are going to be consulting with Indigenous communities who want to be part of that conversation.
With that takes to the end of the just over the 5 minutes. And so in the interest of time, we're going to keep going right now to Mr. Maloney, and the clock is starting for you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try to be quick because we only have 5 minutes. I just want to say thank you for both of you for being here. Minister Wilkinson, you're always generous with your time. In my 6.5 years on this committee, I don't recall a time when two ministers have appeared at the same time. So this is very special occasion. My first question is, could both of you please tell the committee how an emissions cap will create a regulatory certainty in a way that would not only incentivize innovation but also supports emissions reductions?
So maybe I start. And thank you certainly for the question and for all of the work that you've done over the years with respect to this committee and this area of interest. The objective of the CAP is to provide ambitious and achievable emission reduction targets for the sector in a way that will provide certainty and predictability. The intent of the CAP is not to drive reductions in production that are not driven by significant declines in global demand. Setting the CAP will provide clear expectations over the long term to industry of what needs to be done to reach net zero by 2050, something the industry itself is committed to. A well-designed CAP will send a long-term price signal to industry of the need to innovate to reduce emissions through investments in technology in Canada that will have the ability to greatly contribute to our emissions reductions efforts. We've already seen this happen with other regulations. Our effort to reduce methane emissions saw the development of various innovative clean technologies, I referred to this earlier, to achieve this goal. And that can be shared and exported around the world as clean technology. In addition to a number of these kinds of incentives, our government has and will continue to directly partner with Canadian innovators to drive investment and to lower emissions.
Thank you for the question. If I may add a few elements, as I was saying earlier, we have started informal consultations on the oil and gas cap on emissions, and with Indigenous leadership, environmental organizations, experts in the field, and oil companies, including in Edmonton and Calgary. And what struck me when I first met the representative of the oil companies is none of them said we don't want anything, we don't want to have anything to do with this cap. They all said let's sit down together and work on this and figure this out. And I think that's the approach we're taking. We want to work with everyone to ensure that we design this in a way that makes sense, both from an environmental perspective and from an economical and from an energy perspective.
Thank you, Ministers. My second question is for you, Minister Guilbeault. Now, could you please speak to the options you're considering in the design of the cap?
Yes, there are a number of options that we are considering that are being considered by my department at this time, but the decisions and details will be developed through a collaborative discussions with industry, provinces. I spoke about Indigenous leadership, experts over the coming months. What I can say is that we remain still very open to the approach and have heard from witnesses to the committee and other stakeholders that some would prefer using existing tools to achieve the cap, while others are interested in a new legislated cap under CEPA. We're currently evaluating all the options at this point, including creative alternatives to the two options I've just outlined.
Thank you, Minister. Okay, and my third question is for you, Minister Wilkinson. Could you explain how our government will address energy demand and energy security concerns while reducing emissions in the oil and gas sector? For example, does this include nuclear power? And how do you avoid carbon leakage, particularly while global demand for fossil fuels remains high?
So let me start with the nuclear question. I mean, you know, in different jurisdictions are going to approach the pathway to net zero differently, and certainly in many jurisdictions, nuclear is absolutely part of that. If you look at France, they've just announced 7 new nuclear facilities they're building. Belgium, in response to the energy security crisis in Europe, has announced that they are going to stop the phasing out of nuclear power. And certainly in Canada, Ontario is a major user of nuclear energy. We have been very clear that in a climate crisis, we need to be open to all non-emitting forms of energy. That very much includes nuclear. We have invested in the development of small modular reactors, and that's something that will continue. But I would say more broadly on energy security, I mean, look, we need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. There are some people, as I said before, who say the energy crisis is such that we should forget about climate change. And there are other people who say the climate crisis is so significant we should forget about energy security and not offer support to our friends in Europe. And I would say both of those are irresponsible positions. We actually need to ensure that we're doing what we can to help Europe at a time where they are worried about being able to heat their homes and deliver their groceries. But we need to do so in a manner that fits within the context of our climate plan, where Canada is doing its part as part of an international effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with the net zero goal. And that is exactly what we are doing, and that is exactly what this cap is intended to be part of doing.
Thank you, Minister.
5 seconds. Okay. All right. I think now we'll go over to, is it Madame Michaud? And you have 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Guilbeault, in May, the IAE said that in order to reduce climate warming up, that there shouldn't be any new fossil fuel project developments. And you even quoted the IAE. With regard to the Bay du Nord announcement, do you think that you're doing one thing, but announcing one thing, but doing the exact opposite? Well, first of all, you have to look at what's happening in the atmosphere. Has there been an increase in emissions or a reduction? The approach that we presented today is an approach where, for jurisdictional reasons, the federal government cannot impose reductions of energy on the provinces, but we have to tackle pollution. We are on track to reducing our methane emissions considerably by 2025. We're heading towards 75% reduction, and that represents the greatest and most ambitious program by 2030. This is the approach that we adopted, and this is inspired by the reports by the IAE and IPCC, and there is still going to be a lot of oil use in 2025. But this morning, the emissions are projected to go beyond the threshold that is required to be reached to reduce the climate warming by 1.5 degrees. Whether we have the Bay du Nord project or not, there is major emission in Canada by the oil and gas sector. And that's why in the last plan that we presented, we showed how that plan, like others, has to achieve major reductions by 2030. And that's why we implemented a cap on GHG emissions that will first cap the emissions and then reduce them, regardless of what project it comes to be or not in the future. Well, you're saying that we're going to exceed the targets. You have approved 1 billion barrels over 30 years, but if you're looking to reduce everything, you say nonetheless that you are listening to what the scientists are saying. The IPCC report projects a number of things, but also that there is going to be a major reduction of GHGs by 2030. It says that all countries have to contribute to that reduction, and that's what we're doing. It says that we have to reduce the cap in the next 3 years, and in a few weeks you're going to see the inventory, and it will show that we have already flattened the curve, and we have reduced an awful lot of emissions, especially in Quebec. Our approach is very pragmatic. The IPCC doesn't necessarily prescribe what each country should do. These are just general statements. We don't look at the jurisdictional aspects of countries such as ours. You have to take the recommendations issued by IPCC and adopt them here and apply them here in a way that is suitable to us.
Chair, thank you, gentlemen, that we are still here able to get some answers. Mr. Guilbeault, I really appreciate you being here, because one of the things that's really I found confusing for me is to try and figure out how the Canadian Energy Regulator is looking at its scenarios when I keep hearing you guys talking about, as you say, a cap on emissions and then reducing them. Under their December 2021 evolving policy scenario, 2019 we had 4.9 million barrels a day oil production, and in 2050 we will have 4.8 million barrels a day production. So that's a pretty lame target if we're going to have the same production in 2050 as we have today. And you've told us that you've used the CER as part of your climate plan. Don't you have a better standard than to say we're going to have the same amount of production in 2050 as we have today?
An experienced parliamentarian like you, Mr. Angus, would know that the energy regulator is an independent body from the government. We don't tell the energy regulator how to do their job, as we don't for any regulator, this one or any other.
Well, I get that. I guess as an experienced parliamentarian, I know how to read the reports. So you tell us that you've used the CER, because I asked you about Bay du Nord. And you said, oh, well, that's in what we've looked at with the Canadian Energy Regulator. So, okay. But I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Bay du Nord was not on the plan in December 2021, so they're thinking of a 1 million barrel a day increase. So is Bay du Nord part of that, or is that increased? But I don't see under their evolving scenarios based on your plans how we end up in a situation that we are still producing the same amount of oil in 2050 as we are today, because they have another scenario that it actually goes up to 6.7 million barrels a day, depending on markets. So what possible use is your cap if the regulator is looking at all the policies and saying production basically stays the same?
I would be happy to answer your question, but I think
No,
Minister
I'd love to hear
Wilkinson
you.
would be-
I ask Mr. Wilkinson all the time. I'd love to hear your answer.
So I will paraphrase or try to what Minister Wilkinson said, but he basically asked the energy regulator to do another study looking at what a 1.5 degree Celsius scenario, compliant scenario would look like. I would imagine that we will get that new scenario.
That's
in
what
some,
I thought. But then
some
you
months
said that
from
you were
now.
using them for your big plan that
Well,
you came up with last
had
week.
to-
So I'm thinking,
we had
okay,
to, Mr.
so
Angus. This was all that we had. I can't.
So your
I can't
plan-
base analysis on a scenario that we or
so, but
scenarios
then
that
you
we
say
haven't seen.
you're not using them, but
Sorry,
then you're
we're-
using them. But Mr. Wilkinson's going to change it.
We're
I'm
out
just
of
still
the
confused.
2.5
Thank you.
minutes here. As much as I'd love to hear more, we're going to move right on. So we're going to go now to Mr. Melillo for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the ministers for being here. I'll direct my questions to Minister Wilkinson, but if Minister Guilbeault, if you feel you're better suited to answer, feel free to step in. I'll allow you two to sort that out. Minister Wilkinson, earlier my colleague Mr. McGuire asked about a consultation with Indigenous communities and specifically around consent. You noted that that your department, that the government is consulting with Indigenous communities, but you didn't answer if you feel that your government needs the consent of Indigenous communities before imposing this emissions cap. So can you tell us if you feel that the government needs consent from Indigenous communities?
As I say, as with all policies, and particularly policies that affect Indigenous communities, we very much are cognizant of and desirous of significant and strong engagement with Indigenous communities, ensuring that we are moving forward in a manner that will actually meet the concerns and the aspirations that they actually communicate to us.
And do you need their consent? I think it's a very simple question.
As I say, we will be setting out through the process to try to achieve consensus with all of the folks that actually are providing input through the process, but we certainly do intend to have consultation and meaningful consultation with Indigenous communities.
Okay, that's certainly not an answer. Minister Guilbeault, do you feel that the government needs the consent of Indigenous communities before imposing this emissions cap?
I entirely agree with what Minister Wilkinson just said.
Okay, the non-answer. That's great to know. Thank you. As I believe, Indigenous Services Canada recognizes 634 First Nations communities in the country. Minister Wilkinson, can you tell us how many communities you have consulted so far?
Well, as you will be well aware, having heard from many of the witnesses, this is a relatively early part of the process. It is a process that is being led by Environment Canada. There has been initial conversations, but there will be many, many more. And off the top of my head, I can't tell you how many Indigenous communities. I can't tell you how many individuals of the 37 million Canadians who may have an interest in this have actually participated either.
Would you be able to consult the department and perhaps come back to the committee with that information?
I'm absolutely happy to, but what I would say to you is that that the government is looking to ensure that communities that have a strong interest in this put their hands up and tell us that they actually want to participate, in the same way that we would be looking for members of the Conservative Party, members of the New Democratic Party, unions, businesses, and everybody else.
Okay, thank you. Sort of back to my first question, because we still didn't get a clear answer on that there. Dale Swampy from the National Coalition of Chiefs, he spoke to the committee. He noted the importance of the natural resource sector to the communities that he deals with, and how the natural resources sector is helping to alleviate poverty on reserve. And I think he gave some great testimony, and I think it was clear that he is. Let's say I'll be a bit gracious to you, that he's a bit unsure about the direction of this emissions cap. So I'll go back in a scenario such as this. Do you believe that you would need the consent of a community, or you would need the consent of an individual like Mr. Swampy before moving forward on an emissions cap?
Well, as I've said, we are absolutely committed to deep consultations to ensure that we actually are thoughtful and thinking through the input that Indigenous communities provide to us. And I would say to you, I mean, one of the pieces of my mandate letter, which you probably know, is to develop an Indigenous benefit sharing framework associated with the extraction of natural resources. And so I'm very much engaged in the conversation and very much aware of how important projects in the natural resources sector are to Indigenous peoples.
Okay, I think I'm going to give you one more chance. Do you think you need his consent before moving forward?
As I say, we will be reaching out to and looking for Indigenous communities to reach out to us to ensure that we are actually gathering the information that needs to be as we try to think through how the best way to actually implement this cap in the same way that we will with provinces and territories and others.
Okay, I appreciate that. Minister, again, thinking of the importance of natural resources to these communities, moving forward, do you acknowledge how important natural resources are to many Indigenous communities across the country? And do you realize that even if it's just in the short term, that an emissions cap, especially if it becomes a cap on production rather than just emissions itself, that this would actually create a lot of economic hardship for First Nations and Indigenous communities across the country?
I am very much aware, and I think I just said, that many of these kinds of natural resource projects are very important from an economic perspective to Indigenous communities. We are very much aware of that. That is why the National Benefits Sharing Framework is actually part of the work that we will be doing over the course of the next couple of years. So absolutely, it is extremely important, and their input in this process is extremely important.
Thank you.
And we will now go to Ms. Lapointe for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci les deux.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming, ministers. The Environment Minister, could he possibly talk to the committee about the measures the government is taking to make sure that the Indigenous peoples are involved, to make sure, first of all, that you're going to benefit to the measures, that the benefits will be accessible, and that the needs of each community will be taken into account? Thank you very much for your question. I'm pleased to announce that we have cooperated with Indigenous peoples. We have encouraged them to participate throughout the entire process. The government is fully committed to make sure they are involved. We recognize the important role that the oil and gas sector plays for a number of communities in the Indigenous regions, and this is why we took their views into account when designing this cap. In cooperation with international organizations, we ensured that there would be stringent measures taken while at the same time protecting the Indigenous communities that depend on the sector. The cap must be imposed while respecting all of their views. We have had a number of discussions with our Indigenous partners and will continue to do so in the coming months.
We've heard many witnesses speak about the importance of decreasing emissions rather than focusing on the production. Could both ministers speak to this, particularly in the context of how this position will support good-paying jobs?
Thank you for the question. Let me be clear. The purpose of the cap on emission for the oil and gas sector is exactly that, a cap on emissions. The objective is to provide ambitious and achievable emission reduction targets for the sector. This will help to drive up innovation technologies that will further support the reduction of emission and grow our clean industrial advantage, which the world is striving for. Doing this work now is essential for the success of our decarbonization efforts, of which many good-paying jobs are dependent on.
So this whole issue in terms of decreasing emissions versus focusing on production is important, not just from a constitutional perspective and a jurisdictional perspective, but if you think about global demand, all of the projections for global demand for oil show oil demand going either a little bit up or, in the case of the IEA 1.5 degree scenario, a little bit down by 2030. And yet between now and 2030, we have to make significant reductions in emissions. So, and of course, the reason why production doesn't go down significantly by 2030 is you don't have broad enough deployment of zero-emission vehicle technology. So we need to ensure that we are driving down emissions at a time when the world is still going to be demanding similar amounts of oil to what it is today. And that is something that this cap is focused on, is finding ways to incent and drive and drive innovation to reduce emissions at a time where global demand is not declining. So After 2030, of course, lower carbon content barrels, the work that is done to drive down emissions so that the production emissions are very small, is going to have value in the international community. At the end of the day, we need to ensure that this cap will actually drive technology deployment that will reduce emissions, whether that's CCUS, it's hydrogen, and it's a range of other things. And that is exactly what this is intended to do.
Thank you. Alors que nous continuons à
While we continue to envision new measures and to look to a greener environment, I was wondering whether the Minister of Natural Resources could tell us what means should be taken to help the workers transition towards more sustainable jobs. Thank you very much for the question. I think, first of all, we have to change our view of this transition by making some major decisions right now to encourage competitiveness and prosperity of Canada for the coming decades. Every province has a relatively unique situation when it comes to natural resources, and it's important to make sure that they can seize every opportunity. We have to ensure that even though the transition is different for every province, that it does nonetheless occur from one end of the country to the other. I do plan to launch a number of dialogues in the provinces that will focus on the regional economic developments and the opportunities that the measures are going to create. Our government is committed to move forward some legislation to support sustainable jobs in Canada. This work is guided by the discussions that we are continuing to have with provincial and territorial governments, NGOs, and other stakeholders to see what their role is going to be in this transition towards a cleaner and greener environment.
For this afternoon, I understand that the ministers do need to leave right about now. We do have another panel coming in, and so we need to suspend. It'll take us about 5 minutes. The officials will stay with us, and we're bringing in the Canadian Energy Regulator. And so as we finish off a technology test, we'll get back. That should give us time to do 1 6-minute round for each of the 4. And then at that point, we'll go in camera for drafting instructions briefly. So now we're suspended for a few minutes.
So are you saying we're going past 5:30?
Well, We are back in session for our second panel. And as I noted, we will probably just do half an hour here. There's a 5-minute opening statement from the Canada Energy Regulator, and then we'll do one round of 6-minute questions to the floor. At that point, we'll end with our witnesses and then go in camera for drafting instructions. And depending on how quickly that goes, we could be done close to 5:30. We have resources for the room until about 5:45, 5:50. So that's the timeline we're working with today. So with that, I believe I'd like to welcome Madame De Silva, Madame Carr, or Ms. Carr, and Monsieur Charlebois. Regrettably, Mr. Moffat from the Environmental Protection branch, his headset broke, and so he's not able to participate because of the translation challenges. And then we have Mr. Hargrove in the hill, in here with us. And do we have Madame Vrani? No. Okay. So that's our witnesses, our experts for this afternoon. So with that, Ms. De Silva, I'll turn it over to, I think you're doing the 5-minute opening statement for the Canada Energy Regulator. So I will start my clock, and it's over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable membres du comité, bonjour.
Honorable committee members, my name is Gitane De Silva, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Canada Energy Regulator. I am joined today by Jean-Denis Charlebois, CER Chief Economist, and Dr. Geneviève Cao, CER Chief Environmental Officer.
Silva, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Canada Energy Regulator, and I'm pleased to be joined today by my colleagues Jean-Denis Charlebois, CER Chief Economist, and Dr. Geneviève Carr, CER Chief Environment Officer. I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from the traditional territories of the Treaty 7 people of Southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations. Treaty 7 territory also includes the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations, and the City of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss our work at the Canada Energy Regulator and how it relates to your discussions on a greenhouse gas emissions cap for the oil and gas sector. I'm going to speak to you today about the CER, our mandate, how energy infrastructure projects under the CER's jurisdiction are assessed, as well as our energy information function. At the CER, we work to keep energy moving in Canada while enforcing some of the strictest safety and environmental standards in the world. Our mandate is derived from our enabling legislation, the Canadian Energy Regulator Act, that came into effect in 2019. It provided us with a new governance structure that separated our operational and adjudicative functions. As the CEO, I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of the organization. Our board of directors provides strategic advice and direction, and the commission is independent in its adjudicative functions. Our core responsibilities include safety and environmental oversight, energy adjudication, energy information, and engagement. In everything we do, safety and environmental oversight are always at the forefront. It is the reason why we exist. As a regulator, we oversee the safe construction and operation of energy infrastructure. The CER does not develop or set government policy, including federal climate policies. Questions on these matters are best directed to my colleagues from Natural Resources Canada or Environment and Climate Change Canada. The CER Act established the Commission of the CER as a court of record responsible for making independent adjudicative decisions and recommendations on pipeline, power line, and offshore renewable energy projects within Parliament's jurisdiction. In making a decision or recommendation as to whether a proposed facility is in the public interest, our Commission is required to take into account a number of specified factors, including the extent to which the project hinders or contributes to Canada's ability to meet its environmental obligations and commitments in respect of climate change. The strategic assessment of climate change and the associated draft technical guidance published by ECCC are valuable tools to support us and industry in considering projects through a climate lens. As outlined in the Commission's filing manual, the Commission will look at the magnitude of a project's direct GHG emissions and proposed mitigations, associated upstream emissions, its net zero plan, the applicability of relevant laws and policies, and the project's contribution to climate change commitments in combination with other factors determined by our legislation. Alongside our regulatory functions, the CER plays a vital role in providing timely and relevant energy information and analysis to support the energy conversation in Canada via our energy information core responsibility. We monitor energy markets on an ongoing basis and produce a series of publications on topical energy issues such as energy trade, energy supply and demand, as well as pipeline utilization, among a series of other topics. We also model, based on a series of different assumptions, how possible energy futures might unfold for Canadians over the long term under various scenarios in our Canada Energy Futures series. La présente version du rapport, publiée en décembre 2020.
Our most recent version of Energy Futures, published in December 2021, included scenarios where we explored what Canada's electricity system might look like in a net zero world, as well as a scenario where Canada and the rest of the world continue to take increasing actions to reduce GHG emissions.
Canada's energy system will depend on key drivers such as energy and climate policies, market prices, and the pace of technological development. The next iteration of Energy Futures is slated to be released in the spring of 2023 and will be expanded to include modeling consistent with Canada's commitment to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Je vous remercie de me donner l'occasion.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today about the work of the CER and more specifically our role relating to GHG emissions. I look forward to your questions.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much. And for anyone who just joined us, I'll use the card system. The yellow means 30 seconds left. The red means the time's up, but don't stop mid-sentence. Just finish your thought, and then we'll move on. So our first round of 6 minutes goes to Mr. Melillo, or, okay, Mr. McGuire.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Mr. Silva for her testimony today as well, and her opening remarks. Has the Canada Energy Regulator ever reviewed the safety and environmental standards in other countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela, Russia, China, and Iraq? And if so, I just wondered, maybe I could ask that question to see if they've actually done a review of that, of their requirements as well, for a comparison.
Well, thank you. Certainly. Well, thank you for the question. We are committed to continuous improvement. So we would look to regulatory structures in other countries to see where we might improve as a regulator. And we also do that domestically within Canada as well. So we're a member of something called the Western Regulators Forum, for example. We work with a series of Western provinces to compare our approaches and see where we can, as I said before, continue to improve as a regulator.
I just wonder if you could table any analysis with the committee that you might have, just for an update. This is sort of the last meeting we're having, I guess, on this topic, and if we could just get that so we could peruse it as well. And
certainly, we'll make note of that.
And maybe a similar information over the last 10 years for keeping, for if the CER keeps track of how much Canadian crude oil and natural gas has been transported by truck and rail. Can you break that down and provide information for us on that?
So we do provide regular market snapshots monthly, usually on crude by rail exports. We don't regulate crude by rail, but we do track that in our energy information program. So we'd be pleased to provide the past snapshots that we have, if that would be of interest to the committee. Yeah,
I don't know if it'll go back 10 years or not, but if you have that information, and by truck too, maybe, I don't know if you have that, that'd be great. Thanks. In 2015, or since 2015, I just wonder if you could table the list of energy projects your organization has received applications from, regardless if they were approved or if the company decided to abandon their projects, just so we could get a list of those that have applied.
Certainly, the applications we receive do form part of the public record, so we'd be pleased to provide that information to the committee.
And in terms of how much time it takes for energy projects to get approved, has the CER ever reviewed where Canada's current legislation and regulations stand in comparison to other nations? We'd just like an analysis of that for our perusal as well.
All right, we'll make note of that request as well.
And one more here, I guess. The Canadian regulator deals with energy companies every single day. The newly released emissions reduction plan, the government wants to a 42% reduction in emissions from oil and gas sector by 2030, as we've heard. However, there are no details explaining how the government plans on doing that. So I just wondered if you'd agree that the Canadian energy sector wants predictability and that announcing caps without details could scare away investments.
Well, it wouldn't be as I mentioned in my opening statement, the regulator, in fact, is not a policy department. So questions of policy would be best directed either to my colleagues at NRCan or Environment and Climate Change Canada. If it would be of interest, we could explain how we factor in climate change analysis in our commission review, our application review process, but the questions of policy would be best directed to my colleagues at Environment and Climate Change.
No, thank you. That I would take your assessment of that then as well, as you just pointed out that you do that. We would certainly like to have that information as well. Chair, how much time do we have? 20 minutes. My colleague had to leave here, but he had a question on page 48 of the recently released 2030 emission reduction plan. We read, modeling of the most economically efficient pathway to meeting Canada's 2030 target projects that the oil and gas sector would make a significant contribution. Wondering what the oil and gas production forecast was used in this, what production forecast was used in this modeling?
Well, I will defer that question to my colleague, Jean-Denis Charlebois, who's our chief economist and works on our Energy Futures project. So I'll pass that over to you, Mr. Charlebois.
Thank you, Ms. De Silva. Mr. Chair, the modeling that was just referenced, if I understood the question correctly, is about the modeling that was done by, I presume, Environment and Climate Change Canada as part of the development of the emission reduction plan. So if I understood the question correctly, I think our colleagues from Environment and Climate Change Canada would be best positioned to speak to the modeling that they have done to assess the contributions of the oil and gas sector to the emission reduction.
Yeah, just here, I'll stop the clock, Larry. Regrettably, the member from Environment and Climate Change broke his headset, and we weren't able to get him online today, so we don't have anybody from that department. So,
perhaps if I could clarify, Mr. Chair.
Just before you do, I'll just.
Est-ce que je pourrais soulever un point d'ordre à cet effet-là?
Point of order, please. Because if something doesn't work, well, in the past, there was a witness who didn't appear because of technical problems. I was going to ask questions of the Deputy Minister. He's not here today. We know that there is an important issue, namely the Baie du Nord. It's unacceptable for me that the Deputy Minister can get out of his obligation to appear here. I had a lot of questions for Mr. Moffat, and I can't ask them. So I would ask that we invite him again, as was done in the past, for witnesses who didn't appear. For me, it's unacceptable that a Deputy Minister can not abide by his obligations to appear before us, especially given the awkward situation we are in right now with the announcement of the Baie du Nord project.
And we had done the technology check. He's traveling today, and he found himself in a hotel room with a broken headset, and there was no time to get a new one.
C'est quand même commode. C'est commode.
Well, that's kind of handy, isn't it?
We've had. What I would suggest, let's go through the question with the witnesses.
Je veux quand même souligner.
I nonetheless want to highlight that I hope that he will appear again before us in the very near future. I don't think one can get out of his obligations like that. If you accept that in all of the other committees, the deputy ministers can always invoke technical problems in order to avoid appearing. I think that this would be creating a very dangerous precedent.
Like I say, we had him online, but he could not pass the technology check that we did for today's session. But what I'm going to suggest is that we go through with the witnesses we have for the remaining time, and then when we go for the report discussion, we can discuss this if we need to do anything else. So, but in the meantime, Mr. McGuire had the floor for 42 seconds left, and I think Ms. De Silva was going to weigh in on a comment in the absence of Mr. Moffat. I'll leave it to you where you want to go.
Yeah, no, I've got these questions that my colleague had, and so I'm just going to table them with the clerk, and we can get a reply from them at that point, if it's okay. But I have a question here just on, any of the top 10 oil-producing countries in the world imposed, or have any of the top 10 ones in the world imposed an emissions cap, like Russia, U.S., Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, China, UAE, and Brazil, and Kuwait in particular, or have any of those imposed an emissions cap?
So again, that would be a question of policy, and I would defer to Glenn Hargrove, who I believe is there in the room from Enercan, who might have that information.
Thank you. The answer is no, not to our knowledge.
Okay. Okay. I'll table these with the.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so now we're going to go to Ms. DeBrusen, and you'll have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my first questions are for the Canadian Energy Regulator, just to ask a little bit more details, because I know that there's been a fair number of questions about imports that we've heard and about foreign oil, and so perhaps it might be helpful to get a little bit of clarity on that. Am I correct that the regulator does review the amount of oil imports to Canada? Is that part of what you do?
So the regulator does authorize exports of hydrocarbons, only imports of natural gas, but we do track imports. So if you have specific questions, Mr. Charlebois is chief economist, that's part of his role, and he could answer those.
Sure, okay. So perhaps we could start with currently, if we compare the level of oil imports now to, say, 10 years ago, are they going up or down?
As a general trend, oil imports are trending down in Canada.
And I was looking at what I believe is a market snapshot that was released at the end of March. Is it correct that the amount of crude oil imports to Canada is the lowest amount imported since 1988? Does that sound correct?
It does, yes.
Okay, thank you. I guess the other question that seems to come up a lot is where does this oil come from? So the largest source of our imported crude oil, where does that come from, the largest source?
The United States.
Great, thank you. Okay, that's helpful. And do you know, like, roughly what percentage of our oil imports come from the U.S.?
In 2021, it was 66%.
Perfect. Okay.
Maybe to point out, though, that as we look at past trends, the United States are taking an increasing share of this. If we go back 10 years, we can see that Canada was importing oil from a more diversified group of countries.
Okay, no, thank you. That's helpful. So that's actually changed over the past. I don't know if I caught how many years he said. You're saying 10 years? Is that
about 10 years.
Okay, so thank you. That's helpful. I guess if I could turn to Mr. Hargrove for a question. We've also been talking a lot about the International Energy Agency and what they're looking at as the changes due to the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And I was wondering, I believe they issued a 10-point plan. Have you had a chance to review the 10-point plan from the IEA?
I have seen the 10-point plan, yes.
Okay. And when you look at it, do you have a sense from what you've reviewed coming from the IEA generally over the past month since the Russian invasion, has there been a focus in it towards also moving Europe towards renewables and to other forms of energy other than Russian oil?
Yes. So the work with the IEA and particularly around moving Europe away from reliance on Russian imports looks at not only diversifying sort of the immediate supply, but also looking at the long-term transition to renewables and also looking at demand restraint measures and those sorts of things as well. So the IEA takes a holistic approach, and I think that's consistent with what the European Union and member countries are looking at as well. As Minister Wilkinson stated, there is obviously a very acute energy security issue in Europe, and that is not to be downplayed. But I would also say that they are looking at these twin crises and looking at how not only can they meet their current energy needs, but also looking at how to transition and looking toward a lower carbon energy future.
I think quote that I saw come out of it that I thought was kind of interesting was, I think the Irish minister responsible for energy, I don't know what the proper title is, but said something like, you can't hold the sun hostage when talking about energy security and looking to other forms other than oil and gas. Okay, I'm running out of time, so just quickly, you mentioned the European Union is consistently also looking towards renewables as a midterm and long-term. Do you have anything that you can add about that?
Yes, I could say the Prime Minister had also announced a Canada-EU energy security working group to look at again how we can look at the immediate energy needs and the medium to long-term energy needs and looking at a holistic view around energy security. And so we have had initial conversations under that working group, and we have been talking about things like LNG and the pathway to a hydrogen economy as well.
I think I just got a red card. I think that means our time's up, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simard, just before you start, I've discussed with the clerk, we've done this with Mr. Maguire. Any questions that you did have for environment and climate change, if you could give those to us, we will send them to the department and get a response back. And then if you had a follow-up, we can do that as well to try to get any of that testimony and the invitations there for all sides, if that helps with the the situation for today.
Pour moi, c'est pas l'esprit du comité.
Well, for me, that's not in the spirit of this committee. We meet as a committee to ask questions of the witnesses. If it's a question of just getting answers in writing or sending the questions in writing, then I think it defeats the purpose. I was going to table a motion to recall the witness, especially under the current circumstances regarding the announcement of the Baie du Nord project. I think that it would be worthwhile to have the Deputy Minister appear. It's surprising that he wasn't more prepared. I mean, he won't appear because his equipment is broken? Well, that doesn't look too good. I was a prof, and when a student told me he couldn't present his papers because a dog ate them, well, this is kind of similar in my view. So very quickly, we heard from a number of witnesses who told us that capping emissions by CCUS, think of cement factories and other polluting industries, but it's not necessarily the case for the oil and gas sector. But with the Baie du Nord project, there may be an addition of 430 megatons of pollution. I cannot believe what this represents in terms of not including that when they came up with the plan. Was there anyone at the department who was aware of this and who actually did some calculations to see what Baie du Nord would represent in terms of this business of capping emissions?
Provide a short response. Again, this would be a question best directed toward Environment and Climate Change Canada. I guess what I would say more generally, rather than specifically about the Bay du Nord project, is that when the emissions reduction plan was developed, part of the process there is to look at what the Canada Energy Regulator scenario forecasts are for production, and that would take into account expectations about future project development and those sorts of things, and then a number of measures and technologies are then modeled, policy instruments, those sorts of things, and the impact that those would have on emissions and production. And so while I can't speak specifically to the Bay du Nord project itself, I would say that that type of modeling takes into account expectations about future production growth and the role of policy and technologies in the reduction of emissions in the industry.
Une démonstration.
So a demonstration that we reached this during this study that was carried out is that oil with a very low carbon footprint is not effective. The companies are not going to go ahead with this if there isn't any government support. We have been asking them questions about this, but there are witnesses from the environmental sector who say that it is not viable for the oil and gas companies. There are two major projects going on in Alberta with CCUS, and 50% of the funding for that comes from public funds. Now we're going to see a tax credit in the upcoming budget for capping emissions. I would say that for Bay du Nord, it's going to explode the requirement for public support. Has the Department of Natural Resources calculated this or taken this into account?
Just to make sure I understand the question, what you're asking is the impact on the requirement for public support of the Bay du Nord project as it relates to emissions reduction?
Ce que je vous demande,
What I'm asking is that we're looking at the capping of the emissions. One of the strategies is to capture carbon, CCS. We know that in the budget there's going to be a tax credit for capture of carbon, and if there is a cap for production, I imagine there has to be more CCUS. So that means that the amount of the tax credit should be much higher than anticipated, knowing that the Bay du Nord project was going to be launched. Is that what the government did?
So the Department of Finance is responsible for the investment tax credit around CCUS. As you indicated, the intention is to announce the details of that. I do not have the details of what will be in the budget with respect to the investment tax credit.
Je suppose.
I suppose, well, I know that Minister Guilbeault announced that he wanted to put an end to non-effective incentives for the oil and gas sector. I imagine that you have thought of this as well. Do you think that supporting the CCUS strategies is an effective form of subsidy?
I believe that CCUS is a critical tool for reaching our climate objectives, and that's in line with statements by the International Energy Agency, the IPCC, and the International Renewable Energy Agency as well. It's part of all net zero scenarios going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Merci.
And now,
Merci.
Mr. Angus, for your final 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madame De Silva, for being here. I've been reading your Canadian Energy Regulator reports with great interest and trying to figure out how you come to your analysis. So when you're looking at future trends, you would take into account the rising price of the carbon tax year by year as you look at what production levels may go to. Would that be how you would do it? Would that be part of it?
So thank you for the question. Yes, and I'll ask Monsieur Charlebois here to answer in more detail. But the way the projections work, the modeling works, is we look at existing policies and legislation, right? So we look at things that are already passed and on the books. But if you'd like the specifics, you can speak to what was included.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to know that because I mean one of the things that we're told all the time from this government is that carbon tax is the most effective way of putting a price on carbon is the most effective way of changing behavior. But if it's still very profitable to increase production and that's factored in, then that's of interest. Mr. Guilbeault today told our committee when I asked him about the news that a major new oil project at Bay du Nord is coming on stream, that was part of the analysis that they worked on the Canadian Energy Regulator's latest scenarios of looking towards a 1 million barrel a day increase. So when you look at the environment plan put out by Mr. Guilbeault, does that contradict the work and predictions that you have made, or would you say that they're complementary?
So I'll ask Mr. Charlebois to answer your specific question around how our projections are included in the work done by Environment and Climate Change Canada. I would just point out in answer to your earlier question that a price on carbon would only be one of the factors considered in the modeling that we do, and we could certainly table the whole list of factors with this committee if that's of interest. So
absolutely, that would be helpful. I just had wanted to get a sense of whether you guys are at cross purposes with your prediction and what the government is claiming, because I've heard sort of two different stories. One from Mr. Guilbeault saying that they factored it in, and Mr. Wilkinson saying he's sort of sending directions he wasn't pleased with it. But based on your prediction, you're looking at a 1 million barrel a day increase under the evolving policy scenario. So when you look at the plan by Mr. Guilbeault and the government, would that be contradictory to what you're anticipating, that 1 million barrel a day increase?
Well, I would point out that our modeling is projections and not predictions, right? So these are models based on a variety of assumptions, but I can ask Mr. Charlebois to explain how we at the regulator and the energy information that we generate work with our colleagues at Environment and Climate Change Canada.
Sure. So what we do, as Ms. De Silva mentioned, is that we make projections based on a series of assumptions. Some of the key assumptions underlying the oil production forecast is the increase in the carbon pricing that has been announced, as well as, depending on the scenarios, continued increase of that carbon price beyond 2030. We also have to make assumptions around the price of oil globally and how it translates into Canadian oil, as well as some policies around climate.
Okay, that's helpful. I get that. Sorry, I'm just running out of time here. So the reason I asked that question was because when you came up with your December scenario, the Ukraine war wasn't on anybody's radar, and that has been a significant game shifter. And Bay du Nord was not really certain whether it was going to go ahead. So that's an extra 500,000 barrels a day that have been added on. But your projection is for 1 million barrels a day. So based on what you're saying, and I know you don't like to talk off the top of your head, but are you looking at this 500,000 barrels as being in addition to the 1 million that you were predicting?
What we do is really run two scenarios, one that is based on current policies and another one that is based on evolving policy. We don't make specific assumptions about specific projects coming online or not. As I mentioned, our production forecast is based on, most importantly, price of oil, price of carbon, as well as other climate policies that become more stringent.
That makes perfect sense to me. It's just so that in December, the Ukraine war wasn't on anybody's radar, and now we're doing massive increase, and Bay du Nord hadn't been approved. So that would be another 500,000. You were talking about a 1 million barrel a day increase. So you have two scenarios. One is it goes up to 6.7 million barrels a day by 2044. But the other scenario that you say is based on lower GHG emission plans puts us at 4.8 million barrels a day, which is roughly equivalent to what we were in 2019. So in that scenario, we're pretty much at the same as where we began, correct?
To a large extent. One thing I will add, though, is you make reference to recent events that have obviously disrupted the global energy system. And the nature of our projection are really long-term. We're talking about projections to 2050. So I think
the 6.7 million barrels a day could be that we could be seeing in 2044 could be on uncertainty in global markets, could be price rises, regardless of what happens here. We could be looking at a major increase to 6.7 million barrels, but you're saying if everything goes based on government's planning, we're basically at the equivalent amount of energy, oil being produced per day as we are today in 2050.
As Ms. De Silva indicated at the beginning, those are projections based on assumptions that we are making. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't predict the future, but rather run analysis and models that require assumptions, and based on whether there is economic value to put production online, then this is what our results are indicating.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
With that, that brings us to the end of the time that we have for today.
Question de règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Call to order. I would like to table the following motion, that the committee invite Deputy Minister of the Environmental Protection Department Bureau for a period of 1 hour.
Thought it was a point of order, and you can't move a motion on a point of order. But what we were going to do is to suspend, come back in for committee business, and then if you can, if you want to do it then, Garnet.
Mr. Chair, are you? Will the committee business be in camera or in public?
Yes.
Okay. Since I have the floor and I didn't acquire it on a point of order, I will just respectfully move the motion that Mr. Simard just moved. And I did not acquire the floor on a point of order. I sought your attention and received the floor. So I will move that help me, Deputy Minister for Natural Resources be invited to appear before this committee. That the Deputy Minister for Environment, is it? The Deputy Minister for Environment be invited to appear before this committee for 1 hour, and that he may appear either remotely or in person so that he can avoid the potential technology problems.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there any discussion, or do you want to go right to a vote?
Hold on. Point of order. That's cute, but he's responding to a point of order, which doesn't make it appropriate.
I asked for the floor.
No, you responding to the point of order raised by Mr. Simard. The chair was kind enough to allow you to talk. We're still dealing with the same issue. It does not change the fact that it is out of order. Let's end the meeting, go on camera, and deal with committee business. Thank you, Chair.
That's totally an accurate description of what happened, respectfully, Mr. Miller. So,
if I could offer, we need to dispense with this one way or the other, either in camera or it's going to. So, yeah, if we can call the vote on. So we have a motion. Julie.
Just to clarify that, so if we're doing that, we have this study on just transition that we're launching into. Is that going to then be taking time from our just transition study to have this next piece? Like, how would that get scheduled? I think it's relevant just to know how it's going to be scheduled.
Yeah, the issue it'll bump up against is if we're delaying this, it'll bump into just transition. We also, the motion for the study that we're trying to conclude today Also includes a tabling date of late April, April 28th. And so then that will, push that. So those are things to keep in mind as we're voting on this this motion that has just been put before us. Charlie.
Thank you. Well, I would normally totally support my colleague, and I always think it's important to have people come, but we have two major studies that we have to get the report out. I think it damages the credibility of our committee to have done that much work, and we still don't have the methane reduction thing done. I'm just surprised. We're wasting time. We're taking time here tonight. I don't think we're going to get it done tonight, so it's going to take up another time. And we've committed to meetings on just transition, so if we keep throwing other things in there, we're not going to get anything done. So I would rather just get the vote done. We need to make a decision about the methane report, and then we're going to have major instructions on the emissions cap. That is a major study that we've just undertaken. We have to do this thing right.
Okay, I have Mr. Simard, and then if nobody else, then we'll vote.
What really hinders our reputation is that a deputy minister would be able to not appear by invoking technical problems. I'm not saying that they were unfounded problems, but that's pretty easy to do. So given this delicate situation, every minister, deputy minister, can say he has technical problems and avoid appearing. I think that the diligence of a parliamentarian must prevail, and what we must do is vote to ensure that the deputy minister appears before us, especially since we have information right now that is very awkward when you compare the study on the cap on emissions, and it completely changes the importance of some of the witnesses' interventions. So I don't think that we should move on to another study to just sweep a government's action under the carpet that has a very debatable impact on the environment. I am really questioning what my colleague Charlie is really saying. And when I think about the government's logic in all this, I don't see how we can allow a deputy minister not to appear and actually approve the tactic he used. I think that that is really going against our responsibilities. It's flouting our responsibilities as parliamentarians.
Vote is inappropriate, but nonetheless, so that the record has no errors in it. It is the assistant deputy minister, not the deputy minister, and that's the assistant deputy minister of the environment, not natural resources, for Mr. Gina's interest, since he suddenly has a keen interest in this subject and him attending.
Notably, I suspect this issue is more important in my riding than in yours.
Right now, okay? So just to clarify, who we had invited today was John Moffat, Assistant Deputy Minister, Environmental Protection Branch. We have a motion that's been put forward to us, and so as it was, do we have the wording for it? We can just repeat, and then we'll have the vote on what has been put before us. So we don't have the wording, so if I could get we'll need to write it down, and then we'll have the vote.
Possiblement, Mr. Simard peut...
Perhaps Mr. Simard can say exactly what I said. Okay, my colleague was saying that the committee re-invite the Assistant Deputy Minister to appear for 1 hour as quickly as possible. That is what my colleague said.
In favor? All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's defeated. And with that, I'm going to adjourn, end this part of the meeting. We're suspend. And then we just need to bring our analysts back in just quickly. We'll bring our analysts back in, do the quick discussion on drafting instructions, and so Charlie, and I also want to thank the officials for being with us today. You're free to go, And so if you want to drop off or leave the room, Mr. Hargrove, thanks for being here. And Charlie, before I suspend.
Yeah, just because I wasn't told we were going to be going later, and I have made other meetings, I would like to have a sense of how long we're going to be in camera.
Yeah, if
Because I
we
was told
can
we'd be
get,
done by quarter two.
if I can suspend this and we can get back into it, then we'll see. We only have the room for another 5 minutes or so. 10 minutes. And so that's the clock that we're up against. So, suspended.